pricing. How much should I charge for this? That's always the question every freelancer wants to know. The most common question that I get and that anyone who talks about freelancing gets is on pricing. And the most infuriating answer you will get is it depends. But the thing is, if somebody comes at you and spits a number and says you should be charging this much, that's actually a red flag. It does depend. So you have to do some of the legwork, and it's going to require a little bit more than just popping in a Facebook group and saying, hey, how much should I charge for this? Now, there's going to be an element of that because you want to understand what people are charging, because you want to understand what the ranges are. But do not take somebody else's opinion in a Facebook group as what you should charge, because you could be wildly overcharging or wildly undercharging by going by someone else's advice, because this will be based on you and several different factors. So I'm going to break all of that down. So by the end of this video, you'll feel confident that you are charging something reasonable that's also stretching you a little bit beyond your comfort zone and ensuring that you can actually pay the bills as a freelancer. Welcome to the Paid Copywriter Podcast. This is for free thinkers and introverts who just don't fit the 9-to-5 mold and want to break free and start a business of one. I share all of the tips, strategies, and behind-the-scene fails of how I transitioned from a 9-to-5 career to freelance writing despite having no experience. So if you want to learn all things copywriting, persuasion, psychology, and marketing, make sure you subscribe or follow, whether you're listening to this on podcast or YouTube. So I'm going to share the most common ways that freelancers set their rates. I want you to choose the one that works best for you. And it might be a combination of one or two of these different strategies. I'll also share how I set my prices. Okay, so the first and most obvious, and the thing that most people just do automatically, is to go into Facebook groups, Slack groups, whatever, and just ask, hey, what do you charge for this? You will probably get wildly varying numbers and rates and fees, okay? But you will understand, at least from a general perspective, how much people are charging. That's step one, but I urge you, if you do that strategy, if you go and you ask people's advice or ask what they're charging, take that as one data point and then continue on in the journey to find out what your rates are. Do not just take that as, oh, okay, that's my template, I'm going to go charge that. Just use that as one data point. Second, use industry reports. That is how I set my rates as a newbie freelancer who didn't have any experience doing this, who literally just decided to one day get online, fill out my LinkedIn profile, build my portfolio, create a website. I literally recreated myself as a freelance copywriter, even though I was in a 9-to-5 sales career before that. What I did was I downloaded the AWAI industry rates report. I will link to it below. It is free. I see people charging for industry reports. I can't say whether or not that's good quality because I have not purchased them, but I just don't see why you should have to pay for that. However, there is reports out there, again, that will give you ranges. So the AWAI report will give you a bottom range and a top range. I made sure that I was in the mid-range when I first started out as a beginner, but that's because I had the confidence to start charging that out the gate. It's a mindset thing. A lot of people will not feel comfortable charging a high rate when they don't have the experience, and that's understandable. I think you should be charging based on your experience. If you're a beginner, you're going to want to be more toward that mid-range or maybe towards the bottom range while you get your footing and gain the experience and can confidently demand higher rates because you're experienced and you're giving better value. It also highly depends on your niche. So I basically came out the gate charging between $350 and $450 for a blog post because I was in the tech niche. That might not be what you can get in other niches. You have to find out if that's normal for your niche. You want to look for any type of data-backed report online. I'm going to link to two below. One is by Peak Freelance. The other one is by Superpath. So there's certain industry reports. They gather data and they try to understand what these companies are paying. And you want to be in that range, not only for you so that you can make a living, but so that you don't drag down the perceived value of this industry. If you're a good writer, you start charging bottom of the barrel rates, it's going to give clients the false illusion that they can get great writers for that price. So don't undercharge yourself for the rest of us. It's not just for you and your pocket. Let's keep the industry high. Let's keep our standards high. Now, there's going to be a certain amount of freelancers out there that are good at numbers, who have that side of their brain where they want to understand how these numbers came about. So for me, somebody who is extremely challenged with numbers and freaks out when I see spreadsheets and numbers, when I saw the range from AWAI, I could breathe a sigh of relief because I didn't have to do math. I could literally just say, between 450 and 850, where do I think I stand, right? It was very easy to work in that range, okay? But if you really want to factor in a bunch of different numbers and a bunch of different factors, you're going to want to go the calculator route, okay? There are free calculators online that will factor in so many different elements of how you can get to that price, and that might make you feel more comfortable if your brain works that way. So I'm going to link below to the Copy Hackers free calculator, and let me just give you an idea of what type of questions they're going to ask, right? So it's going to say, which of these best describes the project you're quoting? Is it an email? Is it a homepage? Is it website copy? Is it a sales funnel? Is it a website audit? How many times have you completed projects like this? So they're gauging how experienced you are. How many hours of professional training have you completed? Yikes. This is where this gets a little dicey because there's no real certification that you need to become a copywriter and a content writer, but okay, whatever. So if you are a calculator person, you're going to want to go that route so you can really feel confident. I'm going to link to at least 3 different calculators you can use, okay? Here's a strategy that I use as well. Once I understood the ranges, this is what really allowed me to dial in my prices, and that is to set your income goal first and then work backward to understand how much work you would have to do and at what price to make that full income. So in the beginning, it's like I knew I wanted to make at least $50,000 a year, right? Because I was coming from a $90,000 base salary as a salesperson. I knew I wasn't going to be making millions as a copywriter. As somebody who was inexperienced, I knew I would have to build up. Okay. Like I wasn't like the get rich quick person. A lot of people, they're hearing all this content online saying 6-figure copywriter, this and that. And it's very enticing. It's very seductive. Please do not fall for that hype. Not to say that you can't, it's just not. You would be the exception rather than the rule, especially if you're starting from complete scratch as a beginner like I did. But $50,000 was a reasonable range. I said, okay, I could probably make $50,000 on my own as a full-time self-employed freelance writer who has never been self-employed, who has never been paid to professionally write. That was reasonable from years ago. Maybe we want to hit that up to 60 or 70,000 with inflation and how expensive cost of living is nowadays, but you get what I'm saying. Choose a reasonable range, work backward. And the beauty of doing it this way is that it helps you hold out. You're not going to take that $15 blog post when you know that's going to put you so much further back from that income goal. So if I know that I can reasonably work for 5 or 6 clients, I'm going to have to factor in what is the lowest rate I would be able to take from those clients without having to take on more clients, right? So if I have a client that's paying me $100 for a blog post, well, I'm going to have to find like a bunch more clients to make that $50,000 goal. So it really sets your standards a bit higher because you're like, I need to be choosy about the projects I take. I need to target higher paying clients. I need to offer this package in a certain way so that I meet that $50,000 income goal. And anything that doesn't meet that requirement, that's going to make me hustle with all of the other work to catch up, it's not going to be worth it, which is really, really key because a lot of people are tempted to take lower paying work because they're just so excited to get that initial opportunity. We've all been there. I've been there. I understand how it can be. However, the problem with that is that once you're working for them, you hate your life. They're probably not a great client, and you wind up resentful that you're working for so little. And then your motivation dies. So you're better off holding out. Now, the hourly to flat pricing equation is something I rely on, especially for lengthier, more involved projects such as web copy, where I know that there's going to be calls and a lot of instruction and a lot of going back and forth and revisions. That's when I try to imagine what this is going to cost me from an hourly perspective. It's a moment where I sit there and say, how long realistically do I think this project is going to take me to complete, and what dollar amount do I want to assign to that hour? Now, the hourly to flat equation, it's trying to understand how long something takes. However, this is not charging by the hour. It's you estimating how long it will take and assigning an overall dollar value. Typically, I do not recommend anybody charges per hour or per word. Per word, I'm not even going to go there. It's not something I've ever done. It's not something I ever will do. I don't think you should either. Let's throw that out. But let's talk about hourly. I have done hourly before and it's been okay. But the problem with hourly is that if you can get a blog post, for example, done in an hour, and it's $65 to $85 an hour, you're only getting paid $85 max per hour for an entire blog post when you could be charging much more. So just because you have honed your skills enough to complete something in a shorter amount of time, the hourly rate actually penalizes you for being better at your job. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's when you charge per hour, you're basically more incentivized to take longer on a project so you can make more. So it's not fair to you or the client. So just try to steer away from hourly. I think hourly can work when it comes to like social posts, when it comes to times when you have to get on calls, you want to be compensated for that time, or maybe a social post, like that's only going to take an hour. So you wind up charging $125 per hour, right? But in general, I don't want you to think about charging hourly. Sometimes clients will push it. The only way I would agree to hourly at this stage of my career is if they're saying, hey, we need you for like 10 hours per month to do X, Y, and Z. Maybe I would agree to that for like long-term stability work. It gets very complicated, but let's talk about the hourly to flat equation, because this helps me price like email sequences. It helps me price website copy, web copy. And it helps me a bit with social media posts because I can understand how long it typically takes me to complete those projects. And mentally, I have set my hourly rate at $100 an hour. So I always try to keep that in mind, even when I'm doing anything. It's like, hey, my rate is $100 an hour and I need to price this project so that no matter how long it takes me, it does equate to at least $100 an hour. So for example, let's say I am tasked with writing a social media post on LinkedIn. I would say for me at this stage, that's going to take me like a minimum of 2 hours in terms of like research, especially in the beginning. If we just start off, let's say it takes me 2 hours to write a LinkedIn post between researching, several drafts, editing, stuff like that. I'm just gonna, I would say 2 hours would be safe. I would charge no less than $200 for one LinkedIn post. Granted, I am in a B2B technology niche. I sell to large enterprise companies, so I can charge those rates. That's not going to be the case if you are targeting companies that don't have budgets like that. So keep that in mind. That's why I'm saying don't go by what other people can charge, because I've built up reputation, testimonials, referrals, an impressive portfolio with samples, logos. I've gotten myself to the point where I can justify those rates. You might not be there, so it's okay to scale it back a bit and say, hey, this is what I'm going to charge now, but eventually, once I build up more credibility, I'm going to start demanding a higher rate. Now, if you're an experienced freelancer, I would say this is something you want to try, which is value-based pricing. So especially if you're in a more of a direct response niche, let's say you write sales pages for course creators, you can estimate how well that page that you wrote will convert, and you can charge them based on that amount. I'm just giving a very simple example because value-based pricing has a ton of different factors that go into it. You can do this equation a lot of different ways, but for this example, let's just say I write a sales page for a fitness coach, and I know that this fitness coach is using that sales page to enroll students for a $5,000 membership. Well, I can do the math. How many $5,000 enrollments is this coach likely to get, and what percentage of that enrollment do I feel justified to charge for? Okay, so again, if you are really dialed in your freelance business, value-based pricing is something you're going to be more comfortable with, but I would say that's pretty advanced and not something that I even do in my business. Now, last but not least, and this is your last resort, if you're just starting out, you just got that email saying, hey, I want to hop on a call, and you're freaking out right now, and you're like, Christine, I don't have time to do all this freaking calculation. I don't feel confident enough. What do I do? I would say this is a last resort. Get on a call with a client and ask them what their budget is, right? And worst case scenario, you go by what their numbers are, whatever they're offering. Maybe you can negotiate a couple $100s up. And then when you feel a little bit more calm and dialed in and you're ready to take control of your business and you do the calculation, say, okay, then you can evaluate and say, wow, this person actually, their rates were not up to industry standard. I don't think I want to work for them anymore. And you just drop the client. Just don't freak out. Some of us who are new might just be like, I just want to get client work under my belt. I don't want to do all the heavy lifting and try to understand exactly what I need to price. And that's okay, because a lot of freelance price setting is trial and error and talking to a bunch of clients and seeing how much you can charge. If you want to know exactly how I set my rates, it was using that AWAI rate sheet. And then it was literally getting on calls, presenting my prices, and then seeing how the client would react. Oh, I charge $450 for a blog post. Okay, that sounds great. That would make me think, well, I probably could have said $550 and they would have been okay with that. So you start to incrementally raise your rates as you get more experience, but it takes trial and error. And the reason why freelancers struggle with this concept is because they're not getting on calls with clients and they're not talking to enough clients. They're not having these meetings, and that's why they get stuck with low-paying clients. So if you really want to know the key to charging a high rate, it's to get out there and talk to a bunch of clients and actually get live feedback on your rates and push the envelope a bit and see how much you can charge. And the great thing is that once you've gotten a client to pay you $650 for a blog post, you're probably never going to go back to lower than that. At least you shouldn't. And that's really how we progress as freelancers. We raise our standards and then we refuse to go any lower than that. Now, if getting on those calls with clients is your issue, you want to learn how to cold pitch. And cold pitching is something that I specialize in. Like I mentioned in this video, I used to be in sales. So what I want you to do is click the link below and download my free guide to how to get on LinkedIn and start cold pitching. That way you can have these conversations with clients and incrementally raise your rates and make the freelance income that you are looking for. I hope this helps. Download that free guide. It is linked below, and it tells a little bit about my story too, so it's not just some boring PDF download. I hope you enjoy it.